Good afternoon, my YouTube viewers. Palestine here. Welcome to my channel. This is the second video that I'm making because I make these videos on my phone and somebody was phoning me, so I had to stop the video. And also, I was having problems with my voice, so I got some water, which I don't like having water in my bedroom because I've got so many electrical cables and things like that. But basically, what I wanted to talk about is something that happened at church today. And I'm going to summarize it because I talked about it already in my previous video. But there's this charity called Communicare, which is in the east side of the town and close to where I live. And I have used this charity before because the charity helps people with their benefits. And so I've used it ever since 2014, 2015, when I was harassed out of my job at Foster Wheeler. I needed to use it because I was so traumatized that I couldn't get another job right away. And so basically, this morning at church, the church that I go to and another church, what they do is they support this charity, Communicare, and one of the man who's in charge, who runs the charity, he actually goes to the church, and he made an announcement saying that the council of the town we live in had cut funding to this charity, and he said that that funding that had been cut was about a fifth of their budget. But he said the good news was that they got funding from somewhere else, and because they got funding from somewhere else, they were going to be able to continue the service. Now, this is the second charity that I personally have had dealings with that funding has been cut by the council. The first charity was a charity called Your Way, which was run by Together. And then so I started going to Your Way in 2015 because the UK government gave me a diagnosis of a mental illness. And I was so traumatized that I went to Your Way just because I was just so traumatized. And the mental health community in the UK and the town I live in get very little support. But this was one place where they could get support. And eventually, it wasn't long after that, maybe 2016 or something like that, that the council took away the building that Your Way was in, and they gave it to a drug and alcohol charity. And the reason why they did that was because people with substance abuse problems are more likely to commit crimes. So they want to get those people off the substances to make them good citizens or good residents of the town. But people with mental health problems are actually more likely to be the victim of crimes, so they don't care. The only thing they care about is getting the people on substances off the substances so they can be upstanding members of society, and they just write the people in the mental health community off, basically. And so in addition to that, after they took the building away from them and gave them a much smaller building, they cut services and cut services and cut services. They used to have a day center, and then they cut the day center and said it was going to be a peer-led day center, and then they just cut the day center altogether. And now this charity, Your Way, which is now called Together, is just a fraction of what it used to be. I still see signs to the charity because I live close to it, but they don't provide hardly any of the services that they used to provide. So that's two charities in particular that I have personal dealings with who've had their funding cut by the council. And see, that fault, the problem is this is all due to austerity. And so basically austerity was started by David Cameron because his vision was that, we would keep paying our money to the government, keep paying taxes to the government, but the government wouldn't provide any services. These services would be provided by charities. That's what David Cameron's vision was. Okay, so these charities can't run without money. They run with volunteers, so they don't have to pay labor costs. They don't have to pay any payroll. They don't have to pay payroll costs because the charities are run by volunteers. But these charities need housing, need accommodation, and they do need funding. And so people who work for the charities, for the most part, don't need the money or just doing it a little bit on their spare time. And so, but these charities do have to get funding, and they do have to fundraise to get some funding. Even though they don't have to pay payroll costs, they still have to pay for a premises, and they still have to pay expenses, even if they're not paying payroll costs. And then so that's what austerity is all about. Austerity is all about you give the government as much money as the government can get away from taking, but the government is not providing the services. These services are provided by charities, and the charities have to do their fundraising. And so the council had been providing funding to the charities, but now the councils are cutting funding. And the reason why the councils are cutting funding is because the councils are not getting any funding by the government. That's what austerity is all about. The government doesn't want to give councils funding either. So the councils have to fund themselves. And 3 ways that I know of for the councils to get funding are: 1, they raise council tax. So my council tax for this tiny little apartment is £134 a month. They buy property and invest in property and rent it out. And then they can also, in addition to paying income tax to the government, you can also pay income tax to the council. That's another thing you can do. And there are other things that the council can do too, but I'm not really aware of those things. Those are just things that I researched when I was researching all this information. So in addition to that, somebody emailed on one of my videos and said that Brexit, that these towns and councils were giving funding by the EU. And when we voted for Brexit, which I voted for Brexit too, that they lost all their funding from the EU. And so EU was giving funding to these towns to build the towns up. And then when we had Brexit, which is what we voted for, we lost that funding. So in the town I live in, a lot of businesses have gone out of business. And I guess a lot of the charities are not being able to provide the services that they had used to provide because they lost EU funding, because we all voted for Brexit. I voted for Brexit. So we're not getting funding from the EU. We're not getting funding from the councils. And that's basically the situation that we are in. And so, and we're in the town I live in is a Labor-run council. This is a Labor council. It's not a conservative council. It's a Labor council. And it's still cutting funding to services and charities. And so we just don't know how far it's going to go. And so also I've received some hate mail on the video I made saying I'm so glad reform was voted out of the town I live in. And one person said, well, why don't you move to another country where they give you lots of free services? Well, I can't do that. The reason why I can't do that is because of my age and my health. So I can't go back to America because America is an insurance-based system. And my health is so poor that I would just be on the streets. And I can't go to another country, such as Scandinavia or Australia or something like that, because they have age limits of which you can immigrate. So I think the age limit generally is like 55. So I'm over that age limit. So this person that sent me this hate mail telling me to move to another country where they give you free services, I can't do that. Number one, my health, and number two, my age. And then I received more hate mail as well, saying, some guy saying that you may have been able to vote reform out of your town, but reform is going to take over. So we've got things bad with a Labor government, and Labor government is supposed to be caring and sharing, which it's not. So how bad do you think it's going to be under a reform government? And reform government wants to model itself off of America, and that is survival of the fittest. So sick people and poor people are not going to stand a chance under a reform government, and they don't really stand much of a chance under a Labor government or a conservative government or anything else. It's because the poor people and the sick people are going to be the first people to lose their funding. And so, one, I'm 65. I can't move to another country. I can retire in another country, but even when you're getting state pension, you cannot, if you're on a state pension, you cannot retire in another country. So that's one thing that the government wants to do, is they want to not pay pensions to people living outside of the UK. So if you're on a state pension, you can't do that. If you are sick, I don't think you can do that. I think that they only want to pay sickness benefit to people actually in the UK. So I can't go to another country. My age and my health is something that means I can't go to another country. So those people that sent me this hate mail telling me to move to another country, sorry, I can't. Those people that sent me this hate mail telling me that reform is going to take over, I hope that doesn't happen, because we've got under a Labor government. Labor government is just as bad as conservatives now. And so if we're suffering under a Labor government, just think about how we're going to suffer under reform. And I'm not mentioning conservatives, because conservatives are genuinely on their way out. So I think I'm going to close this video. I've talked about what I wanted to talk about charities losing their funding by the local council. And the local council is cutting funding because the government is not giving them any funding. And because the government is not giving them any funding, they have to fund themselves. And that's why they're cutting funding to charities. And this is all to do with austerity. And could it be something to do with us voting for Brexit as well? I'm not sure, but I do know it's to do with austerity. So thank you so much for watching my video. If you like my video, please like and subscribe. I've got lots of things to say, so I'll be making another video soon.